never imagined the woman I loved the most would one day look at me like a stranger. But that's exactly what happened on the night that was supposed to be the happiest of our lives, our wedding night. My name is Daniel, and I'm here to tell you how my own arrogance, temptation, and lies destroyed the purest thing I ever had, and how karma made sure I paid for it. The night started beautifully. The lights shimmered across the reception hall, laughter filled the air, and Emily, my bride, looked like a dream in her white gown. Her smile was radiant, the kind that made everyone believe in love. But behind my smile, I was hiding something dark, something I thought I could control. Earlier that week, an ex-girlfriend named Chloe had reached out. She congratulated me and asked to meet just to say goodbye properly. I told myself it was harmless, just closure before I began a new life. But deep down I knew I shouldn't go. Still I did. That meeting turned into a few drinks, then blurred lines, then a mistake I couldn't take back. On my wedding day, I stood at the altar, pretending I hadn't betrayed the woman who trusted me with her heart. Every word of the vows burned my tongue. I promised to be faithful, I said, while guilt clawed at my chest. Emily held my hands, eyes full of love, and I forced myself to smile, hoping my secret would stay buried forever. After the ceremony, everyone cheered as we danced, kissed, and cut the cake. I thought I'd done it. I thought I could start fresh. But karma has a strange way of revealing truth at the worst possible time. That night, when we returned to the hotel suite filled with rose petals and champagne, I saw Emily holding my phone. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. "Who's Chloe?" she asked, her voice trembling. My heart stopped. The world spun. I felt the blood drain from my body as she held up the screen, showing the messages I thought I'd deleted. Every word, every lie exposed. And in that single moment, my wedding night became the night everything fell apart. I froze where I stood, my throat tightening as if invisible hands were choking me. Emily's eyes were no longer soft or loving, they were cold, filled with disbelief and pain. "Tell me it's not true, Daniel," she whispered, her voice breaking. But what could I say? The proof was right there. I opened my mouth, but only silence came out. The room felt suffocating, the romantic glow of candles now mocking me. I took a step toward her, desperate to explain, but she stepped back, shaking her head. "Don't come near me," she said, tears streaming down her face. I had never seen her cry like that, not even when her father died. "Emily, please, it didn't mean anything. It was a mistake," I stammered, every word sounding weaker than the last. "A mistake?" she snapped. "You promised me honesty, loyalty, forever. And you betrayed me before the ink on our marriage certificate even dried." Her words cut deeper than any knife. I reached out, but she threw my phone at me and stormed toward the door. I ran after her, begging, "Please don't go, let me explain." But she turned once, her face pale and trembling, and said something I'll never forget. "You didn't just cheat on me, Daniel. You cheated on the life we dreamed of." Then she walked out, slamming the door behind her, leaving me standing alone in that luxury suite, surrounded by the ashes of what was supposed to be our beginning. The silence that followed was unbearable. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head, replaying every stupid choice that led me here. The drinks, the lies, the arrogance. I thought I could control everything. I thought I was too smart to get caught. But as I stared at the wedding pictures on the table, her smile frozen in time, I realized I had destroyed something irreplaceable. Hours passed, maybe the whole night. I sent her dozens of messages, left voicemails, but there was no reply. Eventually, I walked out into the cold night air, still wearing my wedding suit, watching other couples laughing as they left the venue. I felt like a ghost among the living. For the first time in my life, I understood what true loneliness felt like, and it was my own doing. The following morning, I woke up on the hotel couch with a splitting headache and a heart heavier than I'd ever known. The champagne glasses were still half full, the petals scattered on the floor like reminders of a love already dead. Emily hadn't come back. I checked my phone, no calls, no messages. My best man, Eric, had texted, "Where's Emily? People are asking." I couldn't even reply. Shame burned through me. By noon, her parents called. Her mother's voice was trembling with anger. "Daniel, what did you do?" "Emily is at our house crying her heart out. She says the marriage is over." I tried to explain, to tell her it was a moment of weakness, but she hung up before I could finish. My stomach twisted in knots. I rushed to their house, still in my wrinkled suit, my tie loose and my eyes swollen from sleeplessness. When I knocked on the door, Emily's father opened it and looked at me with disgust. "You've done enough," he said coldly, blocking the doorway. I begged, pleaded, but he only said one thing that echoed in my head for months after. "You'll understand her pain when you lose something you can never replace." I drove home that evening to an empty apartment. The silence was unbearable. I sat there staring at our wedding photo on the wall, her smile shining so bright that it made me ache inside. Guilt became my shadow. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't work. I called her every day for weeks, left voice notes apologizing, promising to change, to be better. She never replied. Friends started avoiding me too. Word had spread about what I did. Everyone called me the man who cheated on his wife on their wedding night. It was humiliating, but what hurt most wasn't the judgment of others. It was knowing that I had broken something so pure, something that once made my life worth living. Months passed, and I finally realized I had to live with the consequences. Karma hadn't hit yet, but I could feel it lurking somewhere, waiting for the perfect moment to make me pay for the pain I caused. And when it came, I wasn't ready. It was about 8 months later when karma finally came for me, disguised as an opportunity. After losing Emily, I threw myself into work, trying to drown my guilt in long hours and endless projects. I thought if I could succeed professionally, maybe I could convince myself I wasn't a complete failure. My company had been planning a major partnership with a luxury real estate client, and I was chosen to lead the presentation. It was the kind of deal that could change my career. I prepared for weeks, obsessing over every detail, every slide, every word I would say. On the morning of the presentation, I walked into the glass-walled boardroom with forced confidence, wearing my best suit and a fake smile. But the moment I saw who was sitting at the end of the table, my entire body froze. It was Emily. My Emily. Except she wasn't mine anymore. She looked stunning, composed and powerful in a navy blue blazer, her hair neatly tied back, eyes cold but calm. My boss introduced her as Mrs. Emily Grant, the company's new financial consultant. I felt my throat close up. She looked at me once, expression unreadable, then turned her attention to the files in front of her. My hands shook slightly as I began the presentation. Every time I glanced her way, I saw no emotion, no hatred, no sadness, just distant professionalism. When I finished, the room applauded, but she simply said, "We'll review the proposal and get back to you." Her voice was steady, detached. After the meeting, I tried to catch her outside. "Emily, please, can we talk?" I begged softly. She stopped but didn't turn around. "We have nothing to discuss, Daniel," she said coldly. "Some mistakes don't need explanations, they just need consequences." Then she walked away, her heels echoing against the marble floor, leaving me standing there with my heart in pieces all over again. That night I couldn't sleep. Her words kept replaying in my head. I realized karma wasn't always loud or dramatic, it was calm, patient, and merciless. She had rebuilt herself while I was still crawling through the ruins of my own making, and now fate had made me watch her thrive in the place where I was supposed to shine. In the weeks that followed, seeing Emily at work became an emotional punishment I hadn't anticipated. Every meeting, every brief encounter, was a reminder of what I had thrown away. She was always calm, collected, and distant, never rude, but never warm either. She treated me like a stranger. It hurt more than any insult could. My colleagues admired her professionalism, unaware that she used to fall asleep beside me, whispering dreams about our future. The contrast was unbearable. I tried to focus on work, but my performance began to slip. My boss noticed. "Daniel, you seem distracted lately," he said one morning, his tone sharp. I wanted to tell him everything, but how could I? How could I admit that my personal failures were now bleeding into my career? One afternoon, I stayed late in the office, going through reports when I saw Emily packing her bag to leave. Something in me broke. "Emily, please, just 5 minutes," I said, standing up. She sighed and turned to me, arms crossed. "Why, Daniel? So you can say sorry again? You've said it 100 times. "Because I need you to know that I've changed," I pleaded. "I haven't touched alcohol in months. I've been in therapy. I'm trying to fix myself." Her eyes softened for a second, then hardened again. "You're fixing yourself because you lost me, not because you realized what you did was wrong," she said quietly. "There's a difference." That sentence hit me like a punch. She picked up her bag and walked toward the door, but before leaving, she stopped. "You once told me love means forgiveness," she said softly. "But love also means respect, Daniel. And you broke that long before the betrayal." The door clicked shut, and I sank into my chair, tears streaming down my face. For the first time, I didn't cry because I missed her. I cried because I finally understood the depth of the pain I caused her. It wasn't just about a mistake. It was about the destruction of trust. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to chase her anymore. I was going to become the kind of man who would never hurt someone like that again, even if she never saw it. Months passed, and though Emily and I continued to cross paths at work, we kept our distance. She was rising quickly in her career, earning respect from everyone, while I quietly rebuilt mine from the shadows. I started volunteering on weekends, donating to shelters, and mentoring interns who reminded me of the hopeful man I once was. But no matter how much good I tried to do, the guilt never completely left me. It lingered like a scar that refused to fade. One evening, after a long day, I saw Emily sitting alone in a small cafe across the street from our office. For a moment, I hesitated, but something in me pushed forward. I ordered 2 coffees and approached her table slowly. She looked up, startled but calm. "I'm not here to beg," I said gently. "Just to thank you." She raised an eyebrow. "Thank me? For what?" "For walking away," I admitted. "If you hadn't, I'd still be the selfish man who thought love could survive lies. Losing you forced me to see myself for who I was." She studied me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "People don't usually thank the ones they hurt," she said quietly. I smiled sadly. "That's because most people don't understand what pain can teach." There was a pause, a silence heavy but not hostile. "You seem different," she finally said. "But Daniel, change doesn't erase the past. It only proves you learned from it." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I know. I don't expect forgiveness anymore. I just hope one day, when you think of me, it won't be with hate." She took a sip of her coffee, her gaze softening slightly. "Maybe," she murmured. "But forgiveness isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn by living better." With that, she stood up, leaving her half-finished drink behind. I watched her walk away, her silhouette fading into the city lights, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger or regret, just peace. Because I finally realized karma hadn't punished me to destroy me. It had broken me to rebuild me, and even if Emily never came back, her absence had become the very reason I became a man worthy of real love someday. After that night at the cafe, something inside me shifted completely. I stopped living in the past and started focusing on becoming someone new, not for Emily, but for myself. I began waking up early, exercising, and journaling every morning about gratitude and discipline. I cut off people who fueled my old habits and surrounded myself with those who inspired me to grow. My therapist once told me, "True remorse isn't about saying sorry. It's about never being the same person again." And I carried those words like a promise. Work slowly became meaningful again. I earned back my boss's trust, led a few successful projects, and for the first time in a long while felt proud of myself, not because of my success, but because I'd finally earned it without lies or shortcuts. Yet despite the progress, a part of me always wondered how Emily was doing. I never searched her name online, never reached out again, but fate seemed determined to keep reminding me of her. One morning, my colleague showed me a magazine article about the most influential women in finance. Emily's photo was on the cover, her smile confident, her story inspiring. Reading about her achievements brought a strange mixture of pain and pride. She had become everything she once dreamed of, and she did it without me. That realization hurt, but it also filled me with deep respect. That same week, I received an invitation to an awards gala where our company was being honored. When I arrived, I saw her there again, radiant as ever, speaking on stage about integrity and resilience. Her speech was powerful, every word echoing with strength and wisdom. I stood in the back of the hall, clapping quietly, my chest tight with emotion. When she stepped down, our eyes met for a brief moment. This time there was no bitterness, just quiet understanding. I smiled, and she gave a small nod before turning away. It was enough. In that simple exchange, I felt years of guilt finally lift off my shoulders. Karma had given me the closure I didn't know I needed. I had betrayed her once, but life had used that betrayal to teach me the meaning of truth, respect, and redemption. A few months later, I received an unexpected email. It was from Emily. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen, unsure if it was real. My hands trembled as I opened it. Her message was short but powerful. She wrote, "Daniel, I wanted to let you know I heard about the youth program you started. It's inspiring to see you helping others rebuild their lives. I hope you found peace." I sat there frozen, rereading her words over and over again. She didn't say she forgave me, but those few lines carried more weight than 1,000 apologies. It was her way of acknowledging my change. That night I couldn't sleep. I went for a walk through the quiet city streets, thinking about how far life had brought me from that broken man in a hotel room. The air felt cleaner, the stars brighter, and for once, I didn't feel haunted by regret. I replied to her email the next morning, keeping it simple. "Thank you, Emily. I'm still learning, still growing, but your words mean more than you'll ever know. I wish you nothing but happiness." I didn't expect a response, and she never sent one, but that was okay. I didn't need it anymore. Life had finally taught me that closure doesn't always come through conversations. Sometimes it comes through acceptance. Months rolled into a year, and the youth program became something bigger than I'd ever imagined. It helped men who had made mistakes like mine, people desperate to change but unsure where to start. Every time I shared my story, I could see the recognition in their eyes, that flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could become better too. And though I never mentioned Emily's name, her spirit was behind every lesson I taught. She was the invisible reason I tried to help others heal. One evening, as I stood before a crowd, speaking about redemption and self-forgiveness, I caught myself smiling genuinely. The man who once betrayed the woman he loved had become someone who helped others rebuild what they had broken. Karma hadn't destroyed me, it had redefined me, and that realization became the most powerful kind of peace I could ever ask for. Time passed quietly, and the wounds that once felt unbearable began to fade into faint memories. I no longer counted the days since I last saw Emily. Instead, I measured time by how much I had grown. My days were filled with purpose, mentoring others, managing my projects, and writing about the lessons life had forced me to learn the hard way. One afternoon, I received an invitation to speak at a national conference about emotional resilience and rebuilding trust, a moment that felt almost unreal. Standing backstage, adjusting the microphone, I felt a familiar wave of nervousness. As I stepped onto the stage, the applause faded into a calm silence, and I began to share my story. Not as a victim, but as a man who once ruined his own happiness and chose to rebuild it piece by piece. Betrayal doesn't always come from evil, I told the audience. Sometimes it comes from weakness, from selfishness, from not knowing how valuable something truly is until it's gone. People listened intently, some with tears in their eyes. When I finished, the applause was thunderous, but it wasn't pride that filled my chest, it was gratitude. After the event, as I was leaving, a familiar voice called out from behind me. I turned around and there she was, Emily. My heart skipped a beat. She looked even more graceful than before, her presence calm, confident, yet warm. "You spoke beautifully," she said, offering a small smile. For a moment I couldn't speak. "Thank you," I managed to whisper. "You were my greatest lesson, Emily. Everything I said today started with the pain I caused you." She looked down, then back up, her eyes softer than I'd seen in years. "You've grown, Daniel. I can see it." I felt something shift, something like forgiveness hanging quietly between us. "I'm proud of you," she said finally, before turning to leave. I wanted to say more, but I didn't. Her words were enough. Watching her walk away, I realized that sometimes karma doesn't punish you forever. It teaches you until you finally understand. And in that understanding I found freedom, not from her, but from the person I used to be. Years have gone by since that day at the conference, and though Emily and I never crossed paths again, her impact has stayed with me in every decision I make, in every person I help, and in every truth I now choose to live by. I often think about how life has a strange rhythm, how it breaks you apart only to help you rebuild yourself stronger. I used to believe karma was just punishment for the things we did wrong, but now I see it differently. Karma is a mirror. It shows you who you truly are, and doesn't let you look away until you change. Looking back, that night when I betrayed her wasn't just the worst night of my life, it was also the night my soul began to wake up. It took years to see it, years of guilt, loss, and struggle. But I understand now that what happened wasn't meant to destroy me. It was meant to rebuild me into someone better. Sometimes I still dream about her, standing in her wedding dress, smiling the way she did before everything went wrong. In those dreams, I always try to tell her how sorry I am, but she just looks at me and says, "You finally learned." And I always wake up with tears in my eyes, but also with peace in my heart, because maybe forgiveness doesn't always come from the person you hurt. Sometimes it comes from within, when you finally stop running from yourself. Today I live a simple life. I still run the Youth Foundation, still tell my story to those who've made mistakes, and I still remind them that pain isn't the end, it's the beginning of growth. When people ask me if I'd ever take it all back, I always pause. Part of me wishes I could. But the truth is, without that pain, I wouldn't have become the man I am today. Emily once told me that love without respect means nothing. I didn't understand it then, but now I live by it. So this is my story, a story of betrayal, karma, and redemption. I lost her, but in losing her I found myself. And that, perhaps, was the real forgiveness I'd been searching for all along.